Thank you so much for the nice introduction, and thank you so much for having me with you today, because it's a great opportunity to address this event. I'm as well working in the trade committee, and I'm specialized on the Asian region and especially India. So it's great to see that there is picking up more cooperation again between India and the EU. Thank you for having me on this important topic, and it's a really important time to discuss this also bilaterally, because climate change and sustainable growth are important questions, and I really hope that they're going to be high on the agenda for the EU-India leaders meeting, which is planned to be in Portugal in May this year, hopefully in person and not only online, because we're very eager to see concrete actions and proposals from that meeting. EU and India have such a long-standing partnership and experience of cooperation in the area of economy and combating climate change. And I believe there is much we can contribute together. And there are three areas I would like to address with you today on EU-India relations in that area. Because first and foremost, I believe global issues require global solutions. EU and India need to continue to step up our cooperation on climate change and greening the economy, especially in an international forum. We are partners working for reform in the UN and most recently in the World Trade Organization, and we need to coordinate as well in a G20 setting. And if we're taking a hard look at the EU-India Strategic Partnership Roadmap to 2025 that was agreed upon the EU-India Summit last summer, it clearly states that the goal to cooperate for the full implementation of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, including the Paris Agreement. And together we have worked for it already and will continue to support global efforts to tackle climate change, and for example, by constructively engaging in global stocktake in 2023, which will inform updating and enhancing the actions and support in accordance with Paris Agreement. I believe we can only do this together, and it's good if everyone else does something, but only together we're good. And that is why I believe we need to lead by example. We know that solutions to global issues need to be sustainable and reached on a global level. And I mean, yes, as a politician and as businesses, we often know that the wheels of multilateral organization and institution sometimes move painstakingly slowly. And therefore, we also need to lead by example on our own, but also together. And that's why we also need bilateral cooperation to reach our goals on a multinational, international level. And the EU and India have several partnerships, dialogues, ongoing projects when it comes to different aspects of combating climate change. And the roadmap to 2025 highlights the need to continue the good bilateral work. So I believe we must work to further strengthen the EU-India Clean Energy and Climate Partnership that was agreed in the 2016 summit. And we need to jointly prepare and implement a new work program. And additionally, I believe it's also important to hold regular meetings on the EU-India climate change dialogue to strengthen our cooperation on all aspects of climate change policies, to then be a good example to the international fora. Because this roadmap is meaning to strengthen our dialogue on environment, establishing a stronger partnership, for example, on resource efficiency, on circular economy. And this is a topic that is especially very dear to my heart. I've been working on a new circular economy action plan in the European Parliament. And I can only stress how important it is that we more and more shift from a linear to a more circular economy if we are serious about combating climate change. And that is like the third remark I would like to make. I believe that trade cooperation has a large potential for climate action and sustainable growth. And with the circular economy action plan in the EU, we not only need to work that on ourselves, so we're not an island being isolated. No, we're a trade organization. We have many partners, and that is why we need to implement circular economy as well in trade perspective, because it can have a better impact to make our economies more sustainable, more resilient, to allow for more sustainable growth if we decouple it more and more by primary resource use, and bring climate action and trade dialogue into real life action. So I think we need to lead by example, and it's also important to convince others to follow in our footsteps. And if we're taking a look at what the EU is doing, we look at the trade and sustainable development chapters of trade agreements, which are aiming at doing that. And by including climate provisions, such as reference to the Paris Agreement, in our trade deals, we show that we believe climate action is a cross-cutting issue that needs to be tackled on all possible levels, on all possible ways, together with our trade partners. Because at the end of the day, it's nice and good and important if every one of us unilateral does their best, but the best possible way we'll only reach by cooperation, bilaterally and multilaterally. And I do believe that EU and India together can achieve a lot of this area. So thank you very much for listening, for my ideas on what we can do together there. And I'm happy if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Svenja. We'll be taking questions once we finish the other MP speech. So did you want to?
Uday, I think you can take the questions. Let me just check with the other MP. He was online till now. I'm not able to see him. Can you just check whether he's online?
Arun, can you check if Mr. Ramireddy is online?
Sujit, I can't see Mr. Ramireddy Garu online at the moment.
Okay, fine. So does anyone have questions, please? For Svenja. Firstly, Svenja, thank you for a great speech. I mean, you touched upon the circular economy. You touched upon why we need to act. I mean, such quite a very interesting points about how we can move forward with this climate change and the whole idea about cooperation around the world. So thank you for that. And does anyone have any questions, please? Come on, guys, we've got the member of Europe, youngest member of European Parliament, I
have a question, if you don't mind, Councillor.
Yeah, yes, please, Manu.
Thank you, Svenja. Thank you very much for that interesting speech. That was quite interesting to see the intent from the youngest parliamentary member to bring forward a circular economy as well as climate change impacts. Just to introduce myself, I'm Manu Shashizan. I'm one of the EU 40 under 40 members, work at the University of Cambridge. My question was that to do with, there is a lot of talk about, and clearly so, that we need to achieve the SDG 2030 targets, and everyone is on that common ground for that. But from a climate change or a climate resilience perspective, there are often voices that's heard that it's not captured quite well within the so-called SDG targets. So what would you think is the role that European Union, as well as generally in the countries around the world, need to do that to make sure that climate action targets are met while meeting the SDG targets as well?
Absolutely important topic. Thank you very much. In fact, I'm not the youngest member. I'm one of the younger ones, but we have the youngest one. She's actually only 22 years old from Denmark, which is very impressive. But I'm among the youngest, but I don't want to claim a wrong title for me.
Yeah, well, I made it clear, one of the youngest. I didn't specifically say that.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Well, I think we need to tackle it on different levels, and it's important that we tackle it on all the policy we're doing. And on an EU level, for example, it's important that we focus it with the money we're spending. We have the recovery fund, the Corona Recovery Fund. 30% of it's going to digitalization, and part of the 30% is going to the Green New Deal. It's important that we trickle this down to all the policy and all the policy areas we're doing. We need to bring it into foreign and security policy, because it will be an issue for security in many aspects. we need to bring it on cooperation, on research and innovation as well. We need to bring it in on our development policy and our human rights policy. We need to implement it on our trade policy. So you can only bring it into action if you do not have a silo thinking about fighting and combating climate change. But if you really start implementing in all areas of your policy and all area of your economy and make it essential part of any international cooperation, I think that will be the only way to efficiently reach the SDGs, and to not start thinking what SDG is more important to reach, because they're all equally relevant and important and need cross-cutting implementation.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Svenja. Manu, we look forward to hearing.
Question, if I may, very quickly to follow up.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Who's speaking?
Hi there, yeah, my name is Dan Rycroft. I'm working for the University of East Anglia in the UK.
All right.
I chair the India Dialogue, so greetings to everybody. Svenja, I thought it was very interesting, and I like your integrated approach to resolving these issues. I wanted to highlight this question. I mean, to what extent are the principles that underpin the UN's Agenda 2030 also prevalent in people's minds? There are these 5 principles. One of them obviously is planetary justice, environmental justice. Does this feature as strongly in policy and action as the specific targets of the SDGs?
From what I can tell in the work in the parliament, this is underlying work, and what I'm seeing in the commission and the guidelines they have set themselves, it's a basis, and they're trying to have policy coherence by navigating it in all parts. And of course, some legislation will feed into it more than others. But to give an example from the area where I'm working in, especially is the trade policy, we see all those kind of aspects. For example, we see a lot of ensuring that benefits from trade as well takes gender perspective into account, enabling more participation of all genders. We see as well cross-cutting way of not only having trade and sustainable development chapters addressing that, but also trying to cross-cut and enhance trade, for example, more in recycled goods. So from the parliamentary work, I can say, yes, we're doing that. An aspect from the commission, it's hard to say because we have yet not seen enough actual legislation coming from the commission, because since they have been in work, basically they started doing the COVID emergency measures and not so much actual legislation. That is only starting to pick up.
Thank you very much, and also congratulations on organizing this event.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. We look forward for this meeting in the future.
Uday, I think the MP has some issue, some broadband issue, so you can go on with the panel discussion. He's going to join later.
Can I also ask a question, maybe, or should we take it in the chat box?
You can go ahead. Who wants to ask a question, sir?
Marius Ochel here from.
Marius, yeah, go on. And then we've got Mahendra Jadeja question as well. There are 2 questions. Any more questions? Could you raise your hand, please? There's an option where you can raise your hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see this.
That's fine. Marius,
okay.
You can go ahead.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Marius here from VDA, German Association of the Automotive Industry. I'm heading a development cooperation project with our Indian sister associations. And I wanted to congratulate also Svenja to the great speech, and wanted to ask, as you highlighted very much the approach on trade cooperation, also when it comes to climate and environmental issues, and also that this can be included in an FTA in the future. I just wanted to hear about your personal view, how many steps we are still away from a free trade agreement from your perspective between India and Germany and between India and Europe, sorry. And because we as the German automotive industry, we would be very much in favor for a free trade agreement in future, but it's a discussion I think we are having since, I don't know, probably since decades, probably since, yeah, at least since some years. So I would be very much interested on your views on that, as I also know that it's not the parliament doing the negotiations, but maybe what you think. Will there be any new steps in May, for example?
I hope so. To be perfectly honest, I think we're still quite a bit away from starting negotiations on a free trade agreement. This is partially because of different expectations about what should be covered in a free trade agreement. But in the follow-up of the RCEP conclusions, we've been hearing signals from India that there's now more interest in working on trade agreements, which I think is a very positive signal, because we should cooperate together. We're one of the biggest economies in the world, and I think it would be better if we work on that, because quite honestly, trade is happening, but if it's happening without a free trade agreement, it's happening at the, well, basic conditions, and there could be so much more benefit to our partners. So I'm curious to see if maybe talks and negotiations will pick up maybe more towards investment agreement as a step before a free trade agreement.
Thank you, Marius. I think we've got Judith who has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also thank you, Svenja Hahn, for your really interesting inputs. My name is Judith Weinberger Singh. I'm currently logged in from New Delhi, and I'm the Associate Director of an organization called European Business and Technology Center. And we implement a business support to the EU-India Policy Dialogues project, and are also closely involved in implementing the Clean Energy and Climate Partnership here. So my question is a very quick one. It's just your opinion or some reactions from your side. Which role could, or at least should, the upcoming EU-India summit play when it comes to further strengthening the ongoing strategic cooperation on green economy and climate change between the EU and India? Do you see any low-hanging fruits to kind of utilize the summit in this regard?
Thank you very much. That's a really important question. I don't see so many actually low-hanging fruits, but I see the relevance on start talking about how are we actually working to implement this the strategic partnership. It's going from 2020 to 25, and to combat climate change, we have actually quite some instruments in it. We have the Clean Energy and Climate Partnership, that should be implemented through different partnerships again. We have the partnership on resource efficiency and circular economy. And we have the water partnership, and we have the partnership on smart and sustainable organization. So I really hope that there's going to be more information on how it's planned to bring this into action, especially on a technological level and exchange level, on how we can benefit from each other's knowledge and technology. We already heard from the speaker before what India is already doing. So I think this is going to be really important to bring some life into this plans and partnership agreements to really bring it forward. I think the most important thing is the transition towards this more circular and resource efficient economies, as the EU is currently working on that as well. And what we can accelerate more forwards towards clean energy. I think this will be the most important points in this roadmap, and I hope we will see more life of to the framework brought from that summit.
Thank you very much, Judith and Svenja. And the final question from Mr. Jadeja from London.
Yeah. Good morning to everyone. It's a question to especially to the Europe and obviously the member of parliament for the the Germany. It's a very, very eye-opening, because in India, your product is whenever it comes to the whether it's a solar power or anything, that I think is you are the one of the the top engineering firms comes from the Germany. What is your the roadmap to currently most of the countries, including India, wanted to do the electric vehicle, and electric vehicle is a key part of it to therefore the batteries and XYZ. Do you have any roadmap either from the European side or Germany side, that how often you wanted to take this the opportunity to India, and what are your thoughts and what are your view, and how when you are likely to take your delegation, as the many people approach me that that they're very much interesting on this clean and green energy, especially to the vehicle. Can I have your thoughts and inside information, if any?
Electric vehicles is one of the biggest discussions we're having. There's not a clear goal of an amount of electric vehicles that should be in the EU. Some member states have quotas planned for that, but in the EU in general, it's regulated over the amount of pollution that car fleets from specific producers are allowed to have. So it's taking a hard look at the overall pollution rate of the car fleet. So they need to have a lot of electric cars to meet the ever going lower goals. So that means at the moment they have to go with electric cars. But in general, it's important that it's not only narrowed down on electric cars, but other technologies like e-fuels or now I'm not coming up with the English word for Wasserstoff. Hydrogen is technology open regulation. Nonetheless, there's a huge debate on how to make electric cars more sustainable. There's a huge debate in a lot of policy framework that we're having. For example, we're having a discussion about a due diligence regulation for supply chain that is coming up in June, as a proposal from the Commission, where it's talked about the raw materials that are needed to produce batteries and electric cars, because there are worries about the way those minerals are mined and the labor conditions there are mined. So we're going to expect a regulation coming up on that area. So it's tackled in a lot of aspects. It's tackled on the way as well on energy, because a lot of the energy we have in the EU so far is not clean. Energy policy is not an EU task. Energy policy is a task of the member states. So we have very different approaches. My member state, Germany, for example, is leaving nuclear power, is leaving coal power, wants to leave gas power, and go all sustainable. Other member states, for example, still have a focus on nuclear power. So they're very different approaches to energy, and really creating clean energy for electric cars is the biggest task in the EU. I hope I could a bit answer your question. It's like a very broad topic.